It's Sandra. Welcome to another episode of Asexualise, my asexual life. This is a place to be for education about asexuality, all things asexual, and I share my own asexual life journey in order to help you in yours. So don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon right now. So welcome to Asexual Perspectives Awareness Month. When I'm recording this live, it's July 2023. And in the UK, we've gone through to the second day of it, but in some countries, we're still doing the first day. So this is day one of Asexual Perspectives Awareness Month. And this month is all about celebrating our diversity across the asexual spectrum and our differences within it. And I was the one who founded Asexual Perspectives Awareness Month. And it was when I brought this book out, published it in July 2017. So throughout the whole of July, I'll be reading some of these chapters in these books, or parts of chapters, I should say. And we're going to be discussing asexual topics on love, life, and sex from an asexual point of view. So, have you ever considered as an asexual person whether you want marriage or not? And the risks that this poses if you marry someone, especially who's not of your own sexual orientation, if they're not asexual. Because obviously, once you get married, you're tied into a financial contract with them, usually, or a type of contract that has financial consequences often. And if you marry the wrong person and they expect sex of you, then it's going to be very difficult. So that's one of the problems for asexuals, is if you marry someone and then they turn out to be very sexual when they've previously said they could live without sex, and then they can't when you're married to them, you can find yourself wishing that you never got married and wanted to be divorced. So if you are an asexual person that doesn't want marriage, this limits you in terms of a prospective partner who does want marriage. I personally don't want marriage. I get attracted to Indian guys the most, and it causes a lot of problems and difficulties for me because they pretty much all want marriage because that's what their culture expects of them. That's what their parents expect of them. And there's not many Indian guys that I know of that choose not to get married. There are some that aren't actually married, but the majority of them do get married. They tend to get married quite young, in their 20s as well. But there's a few that are more like 30 years old, around that mark, that have got together with someone a bit later in life. So if we dive into asexual perspectives and we see some of these perspectives in here, and it's Joe's story. So if you've got the book, if you haven't, go and grab your copy now. Asexual Perspectives on Amazon. You can get it from Barnes & Noble, Waterstones, Blackwell's, Walmart as well. So go and type in Asexual Perspectives and grab yourself a copy, because we'll be reading from this month. And this is Joe's story, page 348. What's your view on marriage? And if you were to get married, would it need to be with another asexual? I think marriage is basically an anarchic, is that how you pronounce it? Anarchic arrangement, or archaic arrangement. I think that's how you pronounce it. I think marriage is basically an archaic arrangement devised to protect property and to make one person the property of the other, which is terrible in my opinion, because it's very controlling. I think domestic partnerships are more sensible for all people, and that there should be no stigma attached to leaving a relationship as long as you fulfill whatever agreement you signed with the other person. I would not want to get married, but I would possibly enter into a legal partnership to protect our mutual interests if it seemed necessary, such as for health reasons. And so, yeah, it's, in my personal opinion, I don't like marriage. My parents have been married for 54 years. I know a couple of asexuals that have got married to other asexuals, and they're really happy together and have a wonderful relationship. And these are people who are young, like in their 20s or 30s. And so it does work out for some people. But personally, I don't like marriage. I don't agree with it. I do find it very controlling. I find, particularly a lot of the time, guys still expect the woman to be tied to the kitchen sink, and they expect a woman to do certain things and be subservient to them, and I'm really not like that. So I personally don't like it. So Eddie's story, page 377. I really don't like the idea of marriage, says Eddie. To me, there must be a reason the majority of them end up in divorce. Then the court proceedings, division of assets, child's custody battle, on and on and on. You don't see that when girlfriend and boyfriend break up. It's much more simple. And if we're honest, it doesn't change anything about the relationship. Two people getting married, they go on a honeymoon, do some things, which is usually sex, then they come back home and continue as they were. Why not skip all that and avoid complicating the statistically inevitable breakup? And I'm of a very similar opinion to Eddie. I think do not get married, because if you do split up, which a lot of the time these days people are doing because they just get with the wrong person, or people are lying and deceiving and showing their best or cheating, showing their best as in they're not really like that all the time, or cheating, lying, cheating, whatever they're doing, then unfortunately, if you get tied financially to that person, or tied into a contract, it costs you a lot of money to get out of it. It's awful. Not only have you got the pain of separating from that person, you got the pain of legally separating from them and everything that goes with it, and all the meetings and all the financial burden. That's why personally I don't like it. I think it's much better to be in a loving, caring, committed soulmateship relationship for life. But if something does go wrong and doesn't work out and you have to part, then it's much more easier and simpler if you do have the option of just leaving that relationship. No one wants a heartache and pain around to go through solicitors and say, he said this, she said that. And I just don't think it's good, And I do think it's very old fashioned and outdated. I do think some people can make it work. My mum and dad have made it work for 54 years, but my mum's a housewife to my dad, basically, and gets anything he wants. And so she's kind of subservient to him in that way, if you know what I mean. And my dad calls my mum his maid and she doesn't mind it. But that would just be totally disgusting to me. I don't think it's a nice attitude to have, but my mum likes being a housewife. It's been her dream to have a kid and be a housewife all her life, so she's got me and then done the housewife bit, and she likes that. If it works, that's fine. If it works for the couple and they enjoy that, that's great. I personally am not of that mindset, right? So, yeah. So Darcy's story on marriage. I have never been one to dream about my wedding, even as a child. I am actually engaged to be married to a sexual person. Marriage is a serious commitment to me, and I have high standards for the person I am marrying, meaning that I do not want to feel like I'm settling at all, which I don't. So I think that's a really important point. If you are going to get married, personally, I would only ever marry for love. I would never marry for division of assets, or for getting cheaper rent because you're paying half each, or getting couples allowance, or whatever you have to do. In the UK, you can get money off council tax for being single, so they give incentives to single people over in the UK, and it's just something that I personally don't think is good, because I've been in relationships in the past where the guys have turned out to be not who they say they are, or not as nice as they first make out they are. And, if you're stuck with someone like that for years, I ended up being that person for years, even though I wasn't married to them or engaged to them even, although I was going to get engaged to them. I'm glad I didn't, And so if I'd have stayed with the person who was wrong for me and got married to them, I would be forever being in that abusive situation. And unfortunately, times have changed so much. It's very difficult these days to get someone for a serious, committed relationship. A lot of guys these days are online. They're pulling different women. They have loads of women in their inbox. They're on Facebook one minute, then they're on WhatsApp chatting to another girl the next minute. Some of these guys are married men as well, and they really don't give an shit. I mean, I've just entered a new dating group, which is a spiritual and friends group, and I've with over less than 24 hours, I've got 103 reactions and 50, is it 58 comments? I did a video about it earlier, shorts video, 50 something comments, and it's wow, but it's how many of those people are married men? Do you know what I mean? And some of them are in relationships and they're coming in to the group, but it is for dating and friendship, so it's not just people in there for dating, technically speaking, but it's hard to distinguish between who's just looking for friends and who's looking for dating, because if someone comes in my inbox, usually it's because they're romantically or aesthetically attracted to me, or sexually in most of the cases of these groups, because they're not asexual groups. And so I find that really difficult, and I think, marriage is very different these days, and a lot of people do end up in divorce because there is so much competition, if you like, out there. And there's also so many people who are just not taking relationships seriously. I mean, the dating world is a freaking nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. And it can get very addictive when you're swiping, and it can get very disheartening, and it can be very, very upsetting. Like, I earlier was talking to an Indian guy who I met through this new group, and I was attracted to him aesthetically, romantically, and we began talking, and it's like I felt a connection with him and a bit of attachment already, and I'm like, I just can't carry on the conversation with him. I had to, because I'm a hyper romantic. So as a guy in the early hours of yesterday morning who video called me, who said he was asexual, but I'm not sure that he was, because the conversation ended up being very physically driven. But this is another guy I'm talking about later on who I did get on well with, who's more of a business guy, and he was really nice to talk to. But I had to say to him, I've got to stop talking to you because you're not right for a relationship for me. Because first of all, he was saying friend, and I said, "Oh, you've just connected with me as a friend, have you?" And it's like, "Well, if I was in the UK and wanted everything you want, would you like consider a relationship with me?" And I'm like, "Well, yes, if you're over the UK, but you're not over the UK." And then he was putting like suggestions in my mind, and when someone does that, it actually makes the brain automatically think of you being with them. He wasn't doing this in a horrible way, but sometimes people can do this to picture the scene. It's something that's used in marketing a lot. Like, picture the scene. You're with your ideal soulmate and you're just like on the beach together, and the sun is shining in your hair, and you're thinking, this person is so beautiful. How could I have ever been without them? And you gaze into each other's eyes and you look at each other's lips, and you just want to go in for a tender, sweet kiss. And you can't believe that it's like, incredible, that moment. It's what you've been waiting for all your life, and you paint a picture. So when someone paints a picture, it's like people read lots of non-fiction, right? And other people read fiction, and the reason they read fiction, and romance is like the hottest topic in fiction, is because people like fantasizing or picturing different scenarios in their mind, and it takes them into that scenario. So when you've got someone on the dating scene that is posing imagery in your head of you being with them potentially, it makes you have an emotional connection and attachment to that person, usually, especially if you're a hyper romantic like me, because it's like you're putting they're putting me and them together in the picture together. Do you see what I mean? And so it's making me think about being in a relationship with them. Whereas if it was just a friend thing, it wouldn't, like, if there wouldn't be so much connection and attachment there. If there was just like, like, oh, if it was just like, well, we're not suitable for a relationship, that would be a bit better. But to actually go through the process of then considering a relationship in like theory, it then puts you in that frame of mind, if you know what I mean. So that was really difficult, because I had to say to him, and then we need to stop talking. He's like, okay, we can just be friends. And I'm like, no, if I'm talking to you, then I'm not going to find the right guy for me. He's like, so you basically saying we can never talk again like this and we just have to stop talking? And I'm like, I just didn't even answer him. I was too upset at that point because I was getting attached to this guy. And, I got on really well with him. Like, he's my type aesthetically. I could talk to him really easily. He understood some of my soul really well when he was talking to me and giving me feedback. So he's quite good at listening to me, which I really appreciated about him. I liked a lot of things about him. But of course, Indian guys usually want sex, marriage, kids, to live together. And even the guys who say, "Oh, right, I could be without sex and that, but I want to live with you." I'm like, no, I just can't live with a guy, and if you get married, people expect you to live together. But there is something, particularly in the UK, called a living apart together relationship. This is known as an LAT. So if you ever come across someone on a dating site that's saying, "I want an LAT," it means it's called a living apart together relationship, where you're not actually living together, but you're still together in a relationship. And some married people do actually have this. So I used to manage a furniture company for a while, and I used to book appointments for designers to go out a measure for fitted bedroom and office furniture. And one day this couple came into the showroom and they were actually married, but they lived in separate places. As far as I know, they were married. They were definitely a couple and they lived in separate places. So we had to get the designer out to both their homes to do their bedroom furniture. They both wanted to stay in the other person's home, but they didn't live together. And from what I remember, they were actually married. But years ago, there was a newspaper article where 10% of the UK population is in a living apart together relationship. There was an asexual person who used to be a friend of mine, and they have relatives that are actually living apart together, having a relationship for years. And there was a customer that came in one of my other jobs, and he had a living apart together relationship. It was with this woman, but they lived separately, but not married to her. So it does actually exist, LATs. In my personal opinion, they're very good because if you live separately, whether you're married or not married, you both have your own space. You can do your own hobbies and interests. You can go to sleep when you want. You have a lot more degree of freedom. You can have who you want in your own home. You don't have to ask permission. And you can do things your own way and live your own lifestyle. When you have two people that are living together that have got different ideology, different lifestyles, like different wallpapers, like different things done a different way, then it can get very, very like you're on top of each other, like you're irritating each other, like you can't really be yourself. And so I much prefer to live separately. I like the guy to live near me, but separately. So yeah, but Darcy's story is interesting because obviously they're getting married. And then we're going to my part of the story. Now, one of the things I find extremely difficult is being a hyper romantic and not experiencing platonic attraction. This is actually written in my book. I talk about this a lot. This means I often automatically skip the platonic friendship stage and can fall in love at the drop of a hat very easily, to the point of annoyance, because it distracts me and takes my focus off my work and what I'm doing. Now, I've managed to change somewhat over the years since I wrote this in 2017, so I don't get full-blown love feelings anymore usually, but I can still get some love feelings. So instead of falling in love at the drop of a hat, it's more like I can get love feelings, or if it's not even love feelings, it's very strong attachment still, romantic and aesthetic attraction very quickly. Because, like I said, I don't experience any platonic attraction. That's very, very weird for an asexual person. Most people recognize asexuality because of the platonic attraction, the platonic element, wanting the platonic relationship, whereas I'm not like that. So, hello, Violet. Lovely to see you. Violet's in chat, by the way. My free romantic self can easily romantically fall in love with guys. Then I just don't feel a connection oftentimes when I see them anymore. Hi, it's lovely to see you. Yeah, that must be really difficult for you because obviously I'm the opposite, really. I mean, well, we sound like we're the same initially, but I just totally too attached really quickly, to the point where I'm in tears. I was in tears today because I got so attached to this guy really quickly, and it's hard for me to stop talking to him, but I know for my own good I have to stop talking to him, because it'll hurt me more if I carry on talking to him and I've got attachment and attraction and romance for him, and he's in India and got no intention of coming over here. Don't cry, bestie, you got this. Oh, thank you, lots of love. Yeah, well, I cried at the time, and then I've just let him go. I couldn't even answer him anymore because he was like, "Oh, so you're saying never to talk to each other again and just end this?" But he didn't friend request me anyway, and I always find that weird. If a guy's really interested, he should friend request me on Facebook. So I didn't have to unfriend him because he'd just come in my inbox. He didn't even friend me. So yeah, I did cry because it's very difficult for me being a hyper romantic because I get attached easily. And I try not to. I've worked and I've improved lots, but it still happens. And it usually happens when I talk to a guy a lot. So in nightclubs, I tend to not talk too much to the guy. The more I talk to the guy, the more attachment I'll feel. So I don't if I kiss a guy, I try not to get too. It sounds weird, but I try not to get too involved with them, with knowing much about them. The least I know about them, the easier it is to not be attached. But if I'm in Facebook Messenger, which I was with this guy earlier for quite a long time, I mean, I think it was over an hour, probably even much more than that, then I get attached because I love as an asexual person through an emotional connection. I usually asexuals do love through an emotional connection in general, and so for sexuals, them having an emotional connection with someone is not the foundation of a relationship for them. Often, it's sexual attraction, which is a bit backward in my opinion. And because I've joined this group as a spiritual group, then you get a lot of people who want to connect intimately in a spiritual way, and it's basically just like very similar in my opinion to being in a romantic relationship, but without the sex, which they think obviously is ideal for asexuals, and it's not, because I actually like my intimacy as an asexual person is like what they would consider as just a like playing thing, if you know what I mean. I don't know how to describe it. So when guys talk to me, sexual guys, they like kissing. It's just like, oh yeah, let's have a kiss, and it means not that much to them. But because the way I love and express romance and have intense feelings and physical intimacy is all to do with kissing, then it's like they're kind of discarding something as not being that important, and it's just like, oh, we'll just kiss, that's fine, and we can just meet up for kissing. And whereas to me, it's like quite hurtful, especially if they got to know me. If I kiss a guy in a club, it's a bit different because I'm kind of used to doing that more now. And it doesn't mean as much because I've made sure it doesn't, because I don't get involved with the guy very much. It's more of a pleasure in the moment type thing. It doesn't mean that I don't get attached, because I do a little bit still. But what it means is that I can, because I don't get emotional connection with them too much because I'm not talking to them, it means I can let them go more easily. Whereas if I'm in Facebook Messenger and I'm emotionally connecting with them because I'm talking about things and they're understanding my soul, and that, it's very hurtful having to like detach from that person again. But I have to do it because otherwise I get feelings for them. And if I've got feelings for that guy, I'm always going to be saying, oh, what if he ever comes over to the UK? What if he ever changes his mind? What if he really does like me? What if this and what if that? And then it doesn't allow space for another right guy to come into my life, because this other one's taking up too much of my time. And they don't have my best interests at heart. They have their interests at heart, which is making a deep emotional connection with a girl like me, but it doesn't need to lead anywhere for them. Do you see what I mean? Whereas for me, I want to make a deep emotional connection with someone and it be very special, and the one person that I want to spend the rest of my life with, ideally, rather than making loads of spiritual, like emotional connections with God knows anyone and everyone from all walks of life. I know I can get bonded to people that's not romantic particularly, and I can get emotional connection with them, but the way they do this in the group, it's like they want that from anyone and everyone, and it's just like normal and everyday stuff. And I'm thinking, no, to me, that's really special to me because that's the way I love. It's like I don't want to be experiencing that with anyone and everyone. It feels like I'm kind of betraying the potential real connection with someone years later that I might get. You know what I mean? The love soulmate connection. It feels like I'm betraying that, and it feels like I'm just splitting myself into loving everyone. And I do love people in a caring sense, but not in the romantic sense, if you know what I mean. So in my book, I'm saying that so I can fall in love or get love feelings over a few text or Facebook messages. This is what I'm actually putting in Asexual Perspectives book, or from a few messages in a Skype session. I'm not saying it's full blown deep love, as the more you know someone, the more you can fall in love with them, because the stronger the emotional connection and bond you form, which is why it's essential that I stop talking to guys who are not going to be the right one for me in my life, you know? I'm just saying the love is very real, and hardly anyone in the world seems to understand this concept or accept it. I have been training my brain to not fall in love at the drop of a hat, and sometimes I do better with this than at other times, depending on who I'm talking to. But because I can still develop feelings of love or something very close to it at the drop of a hat, it's tough. I agree, it seems absurd, but put it this way, when it happens, it's like having my heart ripped out of me time and time again. This is how very real it is for me. I cry, feel pain, and then I have to realize this will pass, although it feels like it won't, and it can go on for months. And I know to an outsider this may seem stupid or unbelievable, but nevertheless, it's very real for me. So these days, I'm able to connect with many people very easily. And when talking to some guys for the first time, it feels like I've been talking to them for ages. So yeah, it's very difficult, you know. It's very difficult being asexual in this highly sexualized world. It's difficult to make a real connection with someone and them understand you. You know, a lot of sexuals, they think that if sex is not involved, it's just a companion you want, just a friend you want, you know? And it's really annoying. It's like people who are heterosexual, they're not having sex every single minute of the day in the relationship they're in. They're still able to love the person in that relationship with them while they're not having sex with them. So it's like an asexual relationship, a relationship without sex is like that permanently. It's like all the bits in between when you're not having sex that an asexual relationship's like, if it's an asexual relationship where you're not having sex. Do you know what I mean? And so you have to kind of understand that a relationship without sex is still a valid relationship. It doesn't have to mean it's just a friendship or just a companion. And these are kind of toss away dismissive statements as if to say that a relationship is not that serious or even a relationship unless sex is involved. It really annoys me. But these are some of the problems we're up against as asexuals. We're up against sexuals not understanding us. We're up against sexuals thinking that they can just hook up with us and it's fine because we don't have feelings like with sexual attraction. We don't have feelings the same as everyone else, but we do have feelings. We still desire connection. We still desire intimacy, just in different ways. And so they don't understand, sexuals don't understand that their little bit of kissing it as foreplay before they have sex is what I like to do all the time as my main thing instead of sex. And how very important that is to me to do it with the right guy, you know, the kissing and the emotional connection. You know, I'm looking for a soulmate who's the bestest ever friend in my life in a romantic sense, who is um you know, I can feel a deep soul connection with him and who we really understand each other on a really deep level. And it's very difficult when you're asexual for sexuals to even understand you. It's hard to explain. When I'm in this spiritual group, I'm trying to explain what asexuality is, and like I even had one person trying to pay me a backhanded compliment in a private message saying, "Oh, I looked it up because I was trying to look it up to see if you were crazy." And it's like, of course I'm not crazy. Although I was making up, I'm not crazy, and I'm not making it up. I'm genuinely asexual. I've been helping asexuals on this channel since 2015, and it's a real thing, you know. And you know, my personal view on marriage is like, don't bother, don't get married, because I think if you get married, and it doesn't work out. It's very mentally difficult for you, financially difficult for you, but it does make life a lot more harder if you haven't got that option, you know. But asexuals deserve love and intimacy and care and respect as much as anyone else. They deserve to be understood. But some people, they're just like, oh, I just don't get it. I just don't get it. If you're not having sex and it's not a relationship, I just, you know, they just don't get it. And that's their attitude. And it sucks. And more guys just think it's so nice for them to suggest meeting up with me for kissing, like they're doing me a favor, or they're just like doing just a temporary hobby with me. Like it's like we've gone to an art class or gone to see the cinema. Oh, we'll just meet up for kissing. That's it. Like it's not going to affect me. Like my feelings don't matter. They haven't taken into consideration my emotional connection and attachment feelings. And that's very difficult, you know, because like I said, the majority of asexuals, in my opinion, love for a deep emotional connection. And so if you get that emotional connection with someone, you know, you're kind of like going to have some feelings for them at some point. You know what I'm saying? So I think the best thing to do is just stick to what you really want in a relationship and in your life. Be very crystal clear on what you want. Don't let others sway you. Don't meet up with someone just for their own pleasure. For example, if I met up with a guy because he thought it would be nice to kiss, that's going to hurt me, because it's like basically you're just meeting up with me for kissing, to use me for kissing, and that's it. Yes, I kiss guys in clubs, but I'm not going specifically usually to kiss a guy in a club. It just happens unless I've got a date with a guy. And, I always hope at some point I might meet a guy at a club for a relationship. There's a little bit of part of me that does have that hope, but it's highly unlikely, because guys in clubs usually want a casual relationship or something short term. So, as an asexual person in this highly sexualized world, it is tough, but we must keep being strong, keep being bold, keep being beautiful as, make sure that we know exactly what we want, so that we don't get taken in by strangers who haven't got our best interests at heart, but they just want some kind of validation for themselves and an emotional connection to keep them going, to keep them feeling good, basically. If it's going to harm you, if you're going to get attached, then part from that person, however difficult it may be, straight away, do it, because it'll save you a lot of heartache and pain. And I've always said on this channel, if you with the wrong person, talking to the wrong person, attracted to the wrong person, the right one will not come along. So I hope you found this video useful, helpful, insightful. There are people who are married who are asexual. I know someone who's been married for over 25 years who's asexual. I'm very happy they're married. So it does work out sometimes. And I'll see you soon in the next video live stream. Thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. Lots of love to you. Thanks for being in chat, Violet, and love you lots. Bye.